Good day, everyone. Dr. Mark Ashipara here. Today's episode, we are going to be talking about the wildfires in Ōfunato, and we recorded this episode on the 7th of March 2025. So information might have changed as this was still an ongoing situation. Also, please be aware that at times the sound quality on this is a little bit lower than our usual standards because of connectivity issues with our guest. We hope you enjoyed today's recording.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the IDRiM podcast. And in this episode, we have a disaster recap for February, where in this specific program, we cover for every disaster that occurring all over the world for every month. And particularly in this month, we will we'll talk about the Ōfunato wildfires, which is the largest and the worst wildfires that have been occurring in Japan. And now we with Professor Yoshia Toge from Kyoto University as our distinguished guest. And since he also worked in this field, we will have some knowledge and information about this disaster event. So, Professor Toge, can you give us the explanations and about how these wildfires, how it can occur and how it's been occurring these times in Japan?
Okay. Nice to meet you. My name is Yoshia Toge in Kyoto University, working as a program-specific associate professor. My major is hydrology, but I'm applying my hydrological approach for the wildfire because currently the climate change is a quite important issues on this topic. But therefore, basically my main major is not for the fire itself. So what I can explain to you now will be kind of just a general understanding and how it was. The in Ōfunato in this year, we have the three large-scale wildfires in the same February. The first one occurs in the 19th of the February. The burnt area is already larger than 300 hectares. Actually, in Japan, the wildfire is not so large generally. The largest case in my experience is 413 hectares in 2017. So 300 hectares is already large enough as a wildfire in Japan. That's why I went to Ōfunato on 23rd of this February and do some field measurement in this area. But unfortunately, strong wind flows on the 25th and 26th. And the 25th, we have the second wildfire. The location is near the Rikuzen Takata city. This is a border, southern border of the different neighboring cities. The distance is 7 kilometers or 8 kilometers far from the first one. So it is not like a fire fly to that point. Maybe these two wildfire is separately occur and expand. The most destructive case is in February 26th. Around noon, the wind was so strong. The wildfire expand almost 600 hectares within the day. So as I said, in my whole experience, the 400 hectare was the largest, but the 600 hectare was burned only in one day, only in one single day. So that's why we all are so surprised, and we couldn't extinct it immediately. After the fire expand to such a large scale, then we cannot control the fire very easily. So the fire gradually expand, and currently 2,900 hectares is now burned. the fire is now expand to even to a living zone. So around 80 buildings was burned now. And unfortunately, one person passed away because of this wildfire issue. So, but we don't know about the reason yet. Maybe we need to investigate in detail later. So, this is just a brief explanation about how the Wi-Fi was.
Okay. Thank you very much. So it's basically it's actually starts already quite a big wildfires from, as you mentioned in the beginning, and then there is another wildfires, and then some extend and become the largest in history. So as you mentioned that it's based on the combination of strong wind and dries. Is it common of these causes to become the source of the wildfires in Japan, or this is the first observations that you get these years, or this kind of wildfires already occurred before in the Japanese history?
generally saying, the wildfire can expand even in Japan when the climate is really dry and the wind was so strong. In the case of the what I mentioned, 400 hectares burned area, it was a 2017 in Kamaise City. Kamaise City is a northern city. I mean the Ōfunato city. This is a place where we have the wildfire now, but the northern part of this Ōfunato city is a Kamaise city. In this Kamaise city, we had the large-scale wildfire in 2017, and the burnt area was a 400 hectare, 413 hectare. At that time, as you mentioned, the climate was really dry and the wind was so strong. So the main causes of the wildfire, large-scale wildfire in Japan is almost kind of consistent. The climate condition is dry and strong wind, and this is a kind of meteorological factors. And maybe this the region, Sanriku region, is famous for the rear coast geology. The other feature of the rear coast geology, the slope is also kind of steep. If the fire expand to the upper side of the slope, then the fire spread speed can be so high. Then it is easy to be uncontrollable. I mean, it is very difficult to control. I mean, if the fire spread speed is kind of so fast. And also, since the geology is kind of steep, so it's very difficult for the firefighters to be inside. We need to bring the water to such kind of places, and also we need to bring the vehicles to such kind of area. But basically, there's no road. In this case, it is impossible to bring the vehicles. In terms of the humans, then it is also difficult to climb. And also, the slope is kind of this one. In this case, if the firefighter go inside and suddenly wind direction change, in this case, the firefighters cannot move so quickly, right? This means it's very, 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 very dangerous. So, firefighting was so difficult in such kind of places. And also, comparing to other area in Japan, the size of the forest is larger in this area. In this case, the combustible material continues, so it cannot finish. It can be larger as they want. If the forest is surrounded by some uncombustible materials, then the fire cannot expand. But the forest is kind of large, so the fire spread cannot be finished so easily.
So first of all, thank you for your clarification and contributing factors on how this wildfire has become large and developed. So looking at how large it is, and basically, as Harris was explaining, a lot of smoke affects many people, and he was highlighting from Indonesia, that they have a lot of wildfires before, and produce a lot of pollution, and it has a lot of effects on people. In these wildfires, has this been observed where a lot of smoke is affecting the residential areas surrounding the forest, or is it just limited to the forest areas?
I don't think the effect is quite significant in this area. I could, なんていうかな。But I can feel that some smoke is coming to the living zone. But not like Indonesian's condition, not like haze. Wildfire in this area, the smoke effect is quite limited.
So thinking about going back a little bit, back to you, as you were saying about the spread of the wildfire and how they were trying to fight. In cases of wildfires in this, where I know in the United States they particularly use water drops from the sea. In the case of this wildfire, are they using the same approach? But also, how would that damage the hydrology of the area? Thinking of, in particular with it being salt water instead of fresh water, and the damage that might have on drinking water supplies, more medium to long term, but also to the ecology of the area.
Maybe I couldn't understand your point.
Yeah, so I was thinking so basically, are they using water drops from the Pacific, and what effects will that have on the local hydrology going forward?
They use the water from the various points, mainly from the seawater, because Ōfunato is quite near from the coastal line. Then they bring the water from the other area. But そうね。now firefighters is now quite busy. So I didn't do an interview to the people, but just I heard from the news, they are saying that they are so difficult to find the water source for the firefighting, and they need to obtain some allowance from the landowner to use the seawater to extinguish the fire. But now it is already permitted, so that's why they use seawater for the fire extinction now. But I don't know what happened when they use some pure water from the river or water from the other water source. But I don't know about this situation.
In terms of, and you probably won't know, this question as much, but because we're still in the middle of the wildfire, but does these types of fires, alter the hydrology cycle in terms of, post-fire erosion and the change in sedimentation, transportation, so basically what I'm trying to say is, in terms of, because of these wildfires, is it changing the water course potentially? And have you observed this in any other wildfires?
In 2017, when we have the wildfire in Kamasi City, the burnt areas are so large, so large. So they decide to cut the trees all over the area. So there are so many areas without any trees. The 2019, we have the strong typhoon comes to the area, and the strong rainfall occurs. At that time, we have the several small-scale landslides in this area. So generally saying, the wildfire will change the local hydrology. So sometimes let's say, post-fire flood, post-fire landslide occurs. But in this event, 2017's Kamashi's case, they cut the tree. So I'm not sure whether this is the effect of wildfire, or this is the effect of the cutting the trees. I cannot conclude it, but all I can say is more general. At least they need to think about how to manage the land after the wildfire, and we need to consider the rainfall after this wildfire event as a secondary disaster. And then in this Ōfunato city, the burnt area is so large, so the discussion will start after fire extinct. But at least when I was in the Ōfunato cities, nobody can start this discussion, right? Because we need to firstly control the wildfire. So I also expect such kind of discussion after that, but not now. So that's why all I can say for this Ōfunato cities are quite limited.
So, Professor Toge, as you mentioned that it's still in the middle of the wildfire and it's not extinct yet. And I want to go back to the causes from the dry soil and the strong winds. Given we are in the climate change right now, and is it expected to we have the same conditions in the futures? And if we have the same condition in the future, will Japan have more wildfires in the similar scale, maybe smaller scale, like this, maybe in the next year or the next 10 years, something like that?
Regarding the dryness condition, the precipitation in this area from this December to February, these three months, comparing to average, long-term average, the precipitation is only 24% of comparing to other average year. And especially for this February, the rainfall, total precipitation was only 6% comparing to other average year. So, such a discussion for the projection of the climate change influence is quite important issue. So, I'd like to work on this topic under Sentan program in next in Japan. So, this is my important work. I'm still continuing this work.
Yeah, so and I think also the other thing I found it fascinating, and it kind of almost dispels a little bit of a myth that wildfires only happen in the summer season. So we've seen this year already two major wildfires, one in California and now one in Japan, where they've taken place in what would be considered, a less likely risk season, because people have this idea that it's only a summer and autumn event rather than something that happened in the middle of winter. And I don't know, let's get your thoughts. Was it surprising that we had this event at this time of year when it's typically a lot cooler and you would not naturally expect a wildfire to occur?
Okay. Climate in Japan is different from the United States, California. Generally, we had a wildfire from the winter to spring because Japan is located under a humid climate. So basically, the climate is kind of wet in the summer. So, even such a Kamaishi's case, it was occurred on May. So, firefighters in this area is alerting that this is kind of dangerous season from March to May. So, in terms of the seasonality, this is not so surprising. But yeah, I heard from the United States case, they have the strong wildfire even this winter time. The precipitation is quite smaller, right, in this area. That's why even such a winter season, they have the wildfire. So such kind of point is quite important.
So, as it has been expected that, and like the firefighters alert that the probability of wildfire is quite high during the March to May. Do you have any recommendations for the future wildfires? How to manage it, how to keep alert, and how to manage such wildfire given the observation that you have been done when you do a survey? Do you have any idea, Sensei, on like, okay, now we have this, and like to prevent some same thing happen in the future, we should do this and this, like that?
まあ、そうね。99% of the wildfire in Japan is caused by human activity, not by natural causes. Maybe in the United States or other regions, the fire causes is the lightning is also important, right? But such kind of cases is quite limited. In this case, the most important adaptation to mitigate the wildfire is we need to be careful to use the fire. This is firstly required. So that's why the generally as an operational work, the firefighters are alerting that this today is dangerous, today is dangerous, today is dangerous, but the Wi-Fi workers. So maybe we need to expand the information more carefully, and then we need to change our behavior. But it is also true the Wi-Fi in Japan is drastically decreasing. Around 20 years ago, 30 years ago, the number of occurrences in the year is more than the 2,000 or 3,000. But now this is around 1,000 cases in whole Japan. So we need to be more careful, and we need to reduce much more. This is our first required adaptation. だから it's in this case, let's say that we have some concerns of the climate change. That sometimes that we have the extreme drought in the future. Let's say, in this case, we need to be careful to use how to use fire. Maybe this is quite important work for us.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking, going back to as well as about you talking about drought, and I'm just thinking of the weather. Was it anything to do like the weather setup that we have seen over Japan? So I know from what I've observed from the UK side that Japan's this year seems to have almost like a stuck weather pattern where we've had quite a lot of heavy snowfall towards the west side. On the I'm trying to think. I remember the I can't remember what sea it is now, but towards the mountains on the west coast, where they've had a lot more snowfall than typical. And I'm wondering if that is because, and that what's happened on the east side of Japan is because we've had like a stuck weather pattern where it's just been driving the snow, all the weather conditions in from the same direction, that it's kind of starved the precipitation levels on the east side. I don't know if that's an observation that's been made.
I see. Generally in Japan, the winter times, kind of one of the typical climate in the winter in Japan, the western side is a high air pressure. Eastern side, air pressure is lower. In this case, the wind flows from the west to east. So if we have some Japan's islands, then the western side, we have more snows. But the eastern side is more dry. Especially in this year, maybe such kind of typical patterns of the high air pressure in the western side and low air pressure in the eastern side. Such kind of the situation is longer than other years. That's why the total precipitation in the eastern side was lower. And also, if the strong wind flows from the wind to west to east, then the wind can be kind of fan wind. Fan wind flows to the eastern side, then it induced the strong wind and the lower dryness, kind of lower humidity in the same time. So it made the wildfire prone condition.
Yeah, so is that type of weather pattern expected to become more common with climate change, so that we're going to start seeing this more Ben effect where we have more drier on the east side, in particular during winter?
Yeah, this discussion is quite important. So, I'm already started to discuss about it, but I don't have any material to show it. So, after the research goes, then I will share the information.
Since you mentioned that the climate now it's become one of the factors that perhaps accelerating and make the wildfires more prone to Japanese areas. Do the profile of the fire forests also make contribution in this sense? Because like this type of the type of forest, the trees, the trees, like for example, oh this because of the forest is like consists of these many trees, which is more flammable to fires. Meanwhile, the other forests maybe don't have this kind of trees that not too prone to fires. It's become the fire is not so risky, something like that. Is the profile of the forest also important? And the second thing is like if that's important, should the government maybe change or do some adaptations in terms of okay maybe we cut this kind of trees and plant other type of trees like that to prevent the wildfires in the future?
I'm not sure to whether the changing the tree types is a good strategy because basically, they use the trees for their incomes. So, thinking only about wildfire, then we need to change the tree types, which is not easy to be burned. But we need to think about the whole society and then determine what to do. But just a general point of the Wi-Fi here, the needle leaf is much easy to burn. I mean, comparing to broadleaf. So, cedar and pine trees is generally used for the let's say incomes. They cut the trees and sell it. So, but the leaf of the cedar and the pine trees has kind of oily. So when the fire ignited, then it produces more heat. So it can induce much severe wildfire. But it, it doesn't mean we need to change tree types because we need to think the whole society at first.
I'm just thinking about vegetation as well. I don't know if you know this, but um, is it also about forest management in terms of thinking of the base? Are they clearing up a lot of old, like dead wood? And because in the case of California, there has been a lot of criticism over there about they're not doing proper forest management and making sure that there is no like more flammable material than is needed. And in that case, we do know it has been helping the spread of wildfires. So I don't know if that's the case here.
Maybe forest management here is not for wildfire because the wildfire is not so destructive disaster here comparing to United States. So, そうだろうな。it quite depend on the case, but generally, such a kind of forest management is not popular in this Japan.
Since it's now the wildfires it's still occurring, do you have any ideas on when the fire extinct? What kind of preparations which the Japanese government should make in terms of, as you mentioned earlier, to prepare for the second disaster or cascading disaster after that? What we landslides will be another landslide since Japan will go to the summer season as there will be wet and a lot of rains, or the potential of landslide will not so high after the fire finish in this Ōfunato area.
It is very difficult to mention this point because, firstly, they will decide, based on the field survey. As I said, I cannot be inside yet, so all I can say is only general things and what occurs in the past.
Thank you very much for coming to the podcast, Professor Toge. And like it was insightful to understand how the wildfire developed in Japan, how it's sourced, and how it can affect and possible general ideas on how the future event can develop from this kind of disasters. Thank you very much for coming again today. I'm sorry there is several connections problems that we need to change the platforms. And after it's posted to the website that we provided to you earlier, we also contact you to see how the recording is distributed. And that's it, everyone. Thank you for listening to our podcast, and see you next time.